individuals having the greatest level of anxiety because their compass now feels as if it's completely off and it's just spinning in circles. And so that's where, even for myself, why I constantly recenter, refocus, is in order, again, for me to be the best to serve my clients, I have to make sure that I have that intuitive voice by making sure there's nothing else that's vying for the attention or pulling away from me being able to hear whatever messages come through. And that's my greatest level of encouragement that I have to each individual, is when we are able to give ourselves a permission to say, you know what, I am feeling a lot of loss. This is really difficult. And it's sometimes very hard for parents to even admit that, because they don't want to admit it to their kids, or they want to put, a strong front on. It's okay for us all to be human right now. This is the time to be human and to be able to sit with and listen to what is our core selves really allowing to come forward, the sadness that we might have. Some of us, may be looking towards that, okay, I can't wait to see what this is going to look like when it comes to all the good that can come out of this. Looking at it from all the facets, and that's really the importance of now. And so when we do that, that allows our intuitive voice to come out. That allows our compass to reset again and start to get its bearings. That allows us to be able to navigate through a lot of this shifting and change, so that we can continue to say, how am I helping to contribute towards a future that I would like to see?
Well, you're a psychic intuitive, not a clinical psychologist, but you've answered my next question before I've asked it. So maybe you saw that question coming, so you thought you would just ask it. But how do you quiet the voices? How do you dismiss the static? You know what you need to do, but it's so difficult to do it because you have so many other distractions. So I think if I hear you correctly, you're saying you need to find a way to dismiss the distractions and move forward with the job at hand, just to just make it happen.
Well, and I'd have to say it's actually a bit different than that. It's not necessarily dismissing the quiet. I mean, not dismissing the quiet, but dismissing the noise. It's more so what is being communicated through that noise. Right now, there is a lot of noise going on. There is a lot of energy that is pulling for us in many different directions. And it's when we dismiss it is when we lose touch with what is it that our core self needs. So an example for myself, like I said, there's been not only everything globally and, throughout our nation that has been happening, but personally in my life. The first time that I ever moved away from my family, I think I was 18, 17, 18. And there was a nephew of mine that was born. And I wasn't able to be around my family whatsoever around that time because of what was going on at that time in my life. And with it, he was really going through a health situation that really resonated with me. And it was very difficult at that time in my life. I wasn't able to really understand and navigate through all the emotions that had come up surrounding that. And I didn't behave well. I'm not proud of the way that I behaved. I took some of those emotions, and sometimes I might project them out, or, I might retreat and just kind of shut down. Lo and behold, after I move away this time, we find out that somebody else, in the family now all of a sudden has a cancer situation, which really hit me really hard. I've got a number of family members that I've lost due to cancer. And, this individual, again, really finding out the news kicked up all the emotions of when I had moved away the first time. And it really brought to light for me the ways that I looked back, and I was like, man, I was really immature back then. And I wasn't shaming to myself, but I did feel ashamed of the way that I had behaved, or how some of those, emotions that I didn't process and deal with manifested themselves at that time. So this really brought up a huge opportunity for me to address some of those emotional traumas I had. And at this point, that's where I was like, you know what? Allowing myself to sit with that. What was I really feeling at that time when I was so young? When I was, 17 or 18, and I don't know if you guys were like me, but at that time in my life, I really did think I knew everything,
Oh, sure.
Typical teenager. Mm-hmm. And looking back, that's where I was able to sit with myself and say, you know what, we had a lot more pain going on because we were away from the family and we felt helpless. Now I was able to readdress things and say, you know what, I'm far away from my family, But as I go through chemo, I can now do things like, hey, did you guys eat? And my family might say, you know what, I was too busy. I didn't get time to. I was taking care of them in the hospital. I'm able to Grubhub from the New York area, to a hospital out there in the St. Louis area.
Mm-hmm.
We have things like FaceTime, things along those lines. Long story short, what it allowed me the opportunity to do was to heal that old pain, that old trauma that had been kicked up due to current situations. And we all have the opportunity to do that, whether it's, we have a family member that unfortunately, contracted COVID and we don't know if they're going to pull through. Have we been in those situations where in the past we didn't handle it in the best manner possible? Maybe there's things that I really need to get off my heart and be able to communicate to that person, because I may not be able to communicate to them later, where we have the opportunity to say, you know what, I just want you to know that I love you. And no matter what we've done in the past, here's what my heart really has to say. And that's where a lot of this disruption, no matter what arena it may be, is we have to sit with what is being kicked up within me. What is, my opportunity right now to be able to look at healing some of the old if something does get kicked up? And how do I navigate through my present moment now to be the best person that I can be, to not only make sure I'm listening and honoring myself intuitively and authentically, as well as honoring and respecting anybody else who may be influenced or affected by my actions and behaviors.
Well, you've said this before. If you're doing a reading and you turn the cards are not the individual's future cast in stone. They're a pathway of what could perhaps happen, but you can always do things to amend that, and quite often amend it in a large way. I think that's what you're saying, correct?
Yep, absolutely. And that's the beauty of free will.
And with free will, you can, you mentioned before, you turn over the death card, and it's not like in the James Bond film, Live and Let Die, where Solitaire turns over the death card, and that means, okay, game over. Nope, the death card doesn't necessarily mean that. The death card could mean many things, correct?
Absolutely. There's so much beauty that can come out of that death card. That death card really also says our old ways have to die. What are the things, what are the beliefs maybe that have held us imprisoned that need to be released and let go so that we can have that freedom and that rebirth? There's so many individuals that I've seen and I've been lucky enough to meet as clients as well as personally in my life, that when they were at that moment of death, I'm meaning the death card
Mm-hmm.
in their lives, they were finally at their breaking point to where they were like, you know what, I can't keep doing what I've been doing, because I realize I've been perpetuating this situation, or I realize how I right now feel as if I'm dead because I'm not truly living. So what are the things that are holding me back from embracing life?
So the death
And
card
they
can
made
mean
that choice.
change.
Absolutely. It oftentimes, in the most beautiful ways, means massive shifting and change to where there's a complete transition from an old into a new. There has to be death in order for a rebirth to happen. And we all get to choose as to what that ends up looking like for ourselves. It's also okay that where sometimes we choose to put it off for a little bit, where it's like, ooh, I don't think I'm ready to do that much change right now, but I see it. We will all get to our place where we're like, you know what, it's time. And it's time for me to do things differently. It's time for me to honor myself more, or it's time for me to make peace and heal some of those old wounds. And that is okay too, psychically, intuitively, and spiritually out there. It's okay. We are all along our journey. And that's part of the wonderful respect we have for each other.
And the journey for us all eventually ends, is just trying to make it better slowly but surely along the way.
Absolutely.
You can't, I'm assuming you're not doing readings in person anymore for the time
Yes,
being.
right, exactly. Right now, they're all virtual or by phone.
How does a virtual or phone reading differ from one where you're face to face, or does it really differ that much?
You know, as far as the process and how information comes through, it doesn't necessarily change like the efficacy of it. But individuals that have met me in person, they know I'm a hugger. And so that's been a little bit of a challenge is I don't get to hug my clients. And I love being able to just really connect with people in person. But one of the great things, and it's one of the things that I've really been finding throughout this COVID environment, is there's still so much that we feel through the phone. Like you can feel somebody smile through the phone. You can also feel, their tears through the phone. And so there's just a different way that we connect and we hear those connections, whether it's virtually or through the phone. And with it, for me, I pretty much, navigate through a reading in the same way that I do if somebody were in front of me. I've had some clients that I never ever have had the opportunity to actually meet in person, but we've worked with each other through 4 years. So yeah, so right now it's definitely still virtual. But I'm hoping one day I will get to give clients hugs again.
Do you do the readings of course, via phone, but do you go via Skype? Do you go via Zoom? What are some of the other vehicles you use, or is telephone right now the main vehicle?
Yeah, so telephone is probably the most often that people go to. I have had FaceTime. I've used Skype, sometimes Facebook Messenger. With some of the different video platforms, sometimes the connection can get a little choppy, and we all know what it looks like when the screen freezes, and then you're like, did they get that message? And then all of a sudden it kind of catches up, and then it'll be like, where were your notes at? Or where did we leave off? What was the last thing that you heard? So that's kind of a little bit of the comical sense of what happens in the virtual world, but all kinds of platforms.
Yeah, and the telephone seems to work best. Maybe because it takes the least amount of bandwidth. I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking.
I know we recently updated here in the home studio to a new internet system, and we went from about a maximum of maybe 7 megabits to over 200. It's been a huge improvement. And I told the guy, I said, look, I want a hard wire Ethernet cord into all my stuff. He said, you don't need it. I said, well, no, I need it because I want the best I possibly can. He said, look, we'll put the router in your studio. I guarantee you will have 200 megabits. And I do. So that's no longer a problem for me. However, you have interruption in service. Maybe if it's for 5 seconds. So there you go. You still get the frozen screen. I'm not the biggest fan of Skype as some are because, you can see the person, but you get that interruption. And with the phone, we're going on 1 hour now. We've not had one glitch, one blip, one interruption in service. So it's hard to say this, but right now telephone is kind of low tech, even though you're half a continent away. It's working very well.
It does. And that's, I think too, it's always the best fail safe method, is going to, the phone service. So
yeah. Because all the problems we have with the phone service and all the damning that people do with our phone service, it's really quite remarkable, especially compared to what we had once upon a time.
Right.
Teresa Romana Powers, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, and if they want to do a session, a tarot card session, whatever they'd like to do, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
The best way is going to my website, which is www.stlpsychicpowers.com. And right on the website, they can go ahead and book a session. They can choose if they want it, virtual, as far as if they want it by Skype or if they want it by phone. And it'll also show my availability on there, and they can book directly from the site.
And I'm looking here, and if I just put Google Romana Powers, the first thing that comes up is T. Romana Powers. So there you are.
Hey, there we go.
Google loves you.
Google knows me. I'm official.
There you go. Very good. What are your plans for the weekend? You're in one of the most exciting places in the world, in one of the most difficult times in the world. So do you have any weekend plans?
That's a great question. I've been really taking a look at that because, I have been kind of like, man, I'm really kind of itching to go into the city and see how everything's going.
Because the restaurants are opening a little bit now, right?
They're starting to trickle open. And so now with a new environment, it's like, which